The rope sliced through the hot Wyoming air with a whistle that sent 3 calves bolting in opposite directions. And Cassandra Hart cursed under her breath as the lasso landed in the dust 6 feet short of her target, knowing her father would have laughed himself sick at the sight. The year was 1878, and the sprawling grasslands outside Cheyenne stretched endlessly in every direction, golden and wild under the unforgiving August sun. Cassandra wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dirt across her pale skin. Her dark blonde hair, tied back in a practical braid, had begun to escape its confines, and strands stuck to her damp neck. She coiled the rope again, her fingers working through the motions she had studied from watching the ranch hands at the neighboring properties. Her father had owned a small mercantile in town before he died 6 months ago, leaving her with nothing but debts and the clothes on her back. She had sold everything to pay what she could, but it was not enough. The bank would come for the rest soon. But Cassandra had no intention of marrying some shopkeeper twice her age or becoming a seamstress working 16-hour days for pennies. She was 22 years old, and she had a plan. If she could learn to work cattle, she could hire herself out to one of the big ranches. Women did not do such work, everyone had told her, but Cassandra had stopped listening to everyone the day they buried her father, and she realized she was truly alone in the world. She had borrowed 3 half-wild calves from a rancher who thought her efforts were amusing enough to warrant the loan. He probably expected her to give up within a week. She had been practicing for 3 weeks now, riding out to this empty stretch of land every morning before the sun became unbearable, and every evening when the shadows grew long. The calves had learned to recognize her and scattered the moment she approached with her rope. Cassandra gritted her teeth and swung the lasso again, putting her shoulder into it the way she had seen the ranch hands do. The loop sailed through the air in a wobbly arc and dropped over the smallest calf's head purely by accident. The animal immediately began to buck and thrash, and Cassandra barely managed to wrap the rope around her hands before the calf yanked her forward 3 stumbling steps. "Pull back with your hips, not your arms," a deep voice said from behind her, and Cassandra nearly let go of the rope in surprise. She whirled around, still gripping the line as the calf continued to fight, and found herself staring at a man on horseback. He sat easy in the saddle, one hand resting on his thigh, the other holding the reins loosely. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-darkened skin and brown hair that needed cutting. His eyes were a startling blue-gray, the color of storm clouds, and they watched her with an expression that was neither mocking nor pitying but simply observant. "I did not ask for advice," Cassandra said, her voice sharper than she intended. The calf gave another hard pull, and she staggered forward again. "No, but you are about to lose your catch," the man said. He swung down from his horse in one fluid motion and walked toward her. He moved like someone who had spent his entire life on horseback and on open land, with a confidence that seemed built into his bones. "Plant your back foot, like this." He positioned himself beside her, not taking the rope but showing her the stance. Cassandra hesitated for only a moment before shifting her weight the way he demonstrated. Immediately she felt more stable, and when the calf pulled again, she held firm. "Now let the rope slide just a little through your hands, not too much. You want to tire the animal out, not fight it head-on. You will lose that fight every time." Cassandra did as he instructed, and within a few minutes, the calf had stopped fighting and stood there heaving, sides bellowing like a forge. She felt a surge of triumph that she tried to keep off her face. "You have been teaching yourself," the man observed. It was not a question. "Someone has to," Cassandra replied. She walked forward carefully and removed the rope from the calf's neck. The animal immediately trotted away to rejoin its companions. She turned to face the stranger fully, coiling her rope with hands that trembled slightly from exertion. "Who are you?" "Jackson Rourke," he said. "I have a spread about 8 miles west of here. 1,500 acres, 200 head of cattle." He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "You are Cassandra Hart. Your father owned the mercantile. You knew him." "I bought supplies from him a few times. I am sorry for your loss. He seemed like a good man." Cassandra nodded stiffly. She did not trust herself to speak about her father, especially not to strangers. The grief was still too raw, too close to the surface. Jackson seemed to understand. He glanced at the 3 calves grazing a short distance away, then back at her. "You planning to hire on somewhere as a ranch hand? If someone will take me, they will not." The blunt words stung, even though Cassandra had known they were true. "Then I will figure something else out." "I am not saying you cannot do the work," Jackson continued. He picked up a stick and drew a line in the dust, then another crossing it. "I am saying no foreman is going to hire a woman to work alongside his men, no matter how good she gets with a rope. They will worry about propriety, about the men getting distracted, about 100 other things that have nothing to do with whether you can actually do the job." "Then, what do you suggest?" Cassandra asked, her frustration bleeding into her voice. "I have no money, no family, and no prospects. I will not marry some man just for a roof over my head, and I will not waste away sewing buttons on shirts for the rest of my life." Jackson looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. "You do not need saving," he said finally. "You need a ranch." Cassandra stared at him. "What?" "You need your own land, your own cattle. Then it does not matter what anyone else thinks about women doing ranch work, because it is your ranch and your business." "I just told you I have no money." "I heard you." Jackson crossed his arms over his chest. "But land is cheap if you are willing to go far enough out, and I might have a proposition for you." Cassandra felt her guard go up immediately. "I am not interested in that kind of proposition." "Not that," Jackson said, and for the first time there was a hint of amusement in his voice. "I mean a business proposition. I have been looking to expand my operation, but I am short on hands. Most of the men around here already have jobs, and the ones that do not are either too lazy or too drunk to be worth hiring. If you are serious about learning this work, I will teach you. In exchange, you work for me, I will pay you a fair wage, and you can save up for your own place. You would hire me knowing that everyone will talk. Let them talk. I do not care much for gossip." Jackson met her eyes steadily. "But I am not going to lie to you and say this will be easy. The work is hard and the hours are long. You will be doing everything the men do, from branding to mending fences to riding night watch. If you cannot keep up, the deal is off." Cassandra lifted her chin. "I can keep up." "Then we have an agreement." Jackson extended his hand, and after a moment Cassandra shook it. His grip was firm and calloused, the hand of someone who worked for a living. "When do I start?" She asked. "Tomorrow morning, sunrise. Do you have a horse?" "No." "Then come to my ranch tonight and we will get you set up. Bring whatever you need for a few months. There is a bunkhouse, but you will have your own room. I will make sure of that." Cassandra nodded slowly, her mind already racing. This was more than she had dared hope for when she woke up this morning. It was a chance, a real chance, and she intended to take it with both hands. Jackson swung back onto his horse and tipped his hat to her. 8 miles due west. You will see the sign for the Rourke Ranch. Do not be late." "I will not be," Cassandra promised. She watched him ride away, his horse's hooves kicking up small clouds of dust, and felt something unfamiliar uncurl in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it as hope. That evening, Cassandra packed her few belongings into a worn canvas bag. She owned 3 dresses, 1 pair of sturdy boots, a coat that had belonged to her father, and a few personal items that held sentimental value. She also took the $50 she had managed to save, tucked into an envelope and hidden in the lining of her bag. It was not much, but it was a start. She returned the 3 calves to the rancher who had loaned them to her, enduring his questions with as much patience as she could muster. No, she was not giving up. Yes, she had found work. No, she would not tell him where. The man had looked doubtful but shrugged and wished her luck in a tone that suggested he thought she would need it. The walk to the Rourke Ranch took her just over 2 hours. The sun was setting by the time she spotted the wooden sign that marked the property line. The ranch itself was bigger than she had expected, with a large barn, several outbuildings, and a house that looked sturdy and well-maintained. Cattle grazed in the distance, dark shapes against the golden grass. Jackson was waiting for her on the porch. He had changed into a clean shirt, and his hair was damp, as if he had just washed. "You made good time," he said, coming down the steps to meet her. "I am used to walking." "Not anymore. Come on, I will show you around." The ranch was even more impressive up close. The barn was well organized, with tack hung neatly on the walls and fresh straw in the stalls. Jackson introduced her to his 2 ranch hands, brothers named Tom and Samuel who looked to be in their 30s. They were polite but clearly skeptical, and Cassandra could see them exchanging glances when Jackson explained that she would be working alongside them. "She will pull her weight," Jackson said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "If she does not, I will be the first to tell her, but you give her the same respect you would give any other hand." "Understood." Tom and Samuel nodded, though their expressions remained doubtful. Jackson showed Cassandra to a small room attached to the back of the barn. It had clearly been used for storage at some point, but someone had cleaned it out and added a narrow bed, a table, and a chair. There was even a lantern on the table and a small stove in the corner. "It is not much, but it is private," Jackson said. "You can take meals at the house with me, or you can cook for yourself out here if you prefer." "This is perfect," Cassandra said, and she meant it. The room was more than she had expected, more than she had any right to ask for. "Good, get some rest. We start at sunrise, and I meant what I said about the work being hard." Cassandra set her bag on the bed and looked around her new home. The walls were rough wood and the floor was bare, but it was clean and dry in hers. For the first time since her father died, she felt like she could breathe. The next morning, Jackson woke her before dawn by knocking on her door and calling her name. Cassandra had been awake for an hour already, too nervous to sleep, and she was dressed and ready when she opened the door. Jackson looked her over, taking in the practical dress she wore and the boots that were already scuffed and worn. "You are going to need different clothes," he said. "A dress is not practical for ranch work. Do you have anything else?" "No. I will see what I can find. In the meantime, hitch up your skirt and tie it out of the way. You are going to be riding today, and you need full range of motion." Cassandra felt her cheeks heat, but did as he instructed, tying the excess fabric of her skirt into a knot at her hip. It was not modest by any standard, but Jackson was right. She could not work in a dress that tangled around her legs. Breakfast was a quick affair of bread, bacon, and coffee so strong it made her eyes water. Tom and Samuel ate in silence, still watching her with wary expressions. Jackson ignored the tension and outlined the day's work. They would be checking the fences on the northern pasture, rounding up any strays, and moving a group of cattle to a different grazing area. "Cassandra, you will ride with me today," Jackson said. "I want to see what you can do on horseback." "I have ridden before," Cassandra said, though the truth was that her experience was limited to a few sedate rides on a friend's gentle mare. "Ranch riding is different," Jackson replied. "But you will learn." He led her to the corral where several horses were waiting. He pointed to a dappled gray mare with intelligent eyes. "That is Willow. She is steady and smart. She will take care of you while you are learning." Cassandra approached the mare slowly, letting the animal sniff her hand before she reached up to stroke the soft nose. Willow whickered softly, and Cassandra felt some of her nervousness ease. Jackson showed her how to saddle the horse properly, explaining each step and making her repeat the process, until she could do it without hesitation. Then he demonstrated how to mount, and Cassandra followed suit, pulling herself into the saddle with less grace but enough determination to make up for it. "Good," Jackson said. He mounted his own horse, a tall bay gelding with the ease of long practice. "Stay close to me today. If you are unsure about anything, ask." There is no shame in not knowing something, but there is shame in pretending you know and getting yourself or someone else hurt. They rode out together, with Tom and Samuel following at a distance. The morning was cool and clear, and the land stretched out around them in rolling waves of grass and sagebrush. Cassandra gripped the reins tightly at first, but as the minutes passed and Willow proved to be as steady as Jackson had promised, she began to relax. Jackson was a patient teacher. He explained everything as they rode, pointing out landmarks and telling her how to read the land. He showed her how to spot signs of cattle, how to identify which tracks were fresh and which were old, and how to anticipate where the animals might have wandered. When they found a break in the fence, he dismounted and walked her through the process of mending it, letting her hold the wire while he secured it in place. By midday, Cassandra's legs ached from riding and her hands were blistered from gripping the reins. But when Jackson asked if she needed a break, she shook her head and kept going. They found a small group of cattle grazing near a creek and worked together to turn them back toward the main herd. Cassandra's job was to stay on the outer edge and keep the animals from breaking away, and though she made mistakes, Willow seemed to understand what needed to be done and compensated for her rider's inexperience. "You did well today," Jackson said as they rode back to the ranch that evening. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Better than I expected, honestly." "I made a lot of mistakes," Cassandra said. "Everyone does when they are learning. The point is that you kept trying." He glanced at her, and there was something in his expression that she could not quite read. "Most people would have quit by now." "I am not most people." "No," Jackson agreed, "you are not." That night, Cassandra collapsed onto her bed without bothering to undress fully. Every muscle in her body ached, and her hands were raw despite the gloves Jackson had found for her. But as she lay there in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night, she felt a fierce satisfaction. She had made it through her first day. She could make it through the next one and the one after that. The days began to blur together into a rhythm of hard work and small victories. Jackson was true to his word and treated her exactly as he would any other ranch hand. He pushed her hard, but he also taught her constantly, correcting her mistakes and praising her successes with the same matter-of-fact tone. Tom and Samuel gradually warmed to her as they saw that she was serious about the work, and by the end of the first week, they had stopped exchanging skeptical glances every time she made an error. Cassandra learned to rope moving cattle, to brand calves, to identify sick animals and separate them from the herd. She learned to read the weather, to understand the moods of horses and cattle, and to anticipate problems before they became crises. The work was brutal, and there were days when she wanted nothing more than to lie down and sleep for a week, but she never once considered quitting. Jackson, for his part, remained a constant presence. He was always there to answer her questions, to demonstrate a technique, or to simply ride beside her in companionable silence. Cassandra began to notice small things about him. The way he always checked on the horses before he checked on himself, the way he spoke gently to the animals even when they were being difficult, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, which was not often but always genuine. She also began to notice the way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was not paying attention. It was not the leering gaze of some of the men in town who saw women as either property or entertainment. It was something else, something deeper and more unsettling. It made her heart beat faster and her palms sweat in a way that had nothing to do with the heat or the work. One evening, about a month after she had started working at the ranch, Cassandra was grooming Willow in the barn when Jackson appeared in the doorway. He leaned against the frame, watching her work. "You have gotten good at that," he said. "Willow makes it easy. She is a good horse. She likes you." Jackson pushed off from the doorway and walked over to them. He ran a hand down Willow's neck, his fingers brushing against Cassandra's arm in the process. The touch was brief and probably accidental, but it sent a jolt through her that she felt down to her toes. "I wanted to talk to you about something," Jackson said, his voice more serious now. Cassandra set down the brush and turned to face him fully. "What is it? You have been here a month and you have proven yourself. You are a good worker, Cassandra. Better than some men I have hired in the past. Thank you. I am not just saying it to be nice, I mean it." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I know you are saving up to buy your own place eventually, but I want you to know that you have a home here for as long as you want it. No conditions, no expectations, just honest work and honest pay." Cassandra felt something tighten in her chest. "That means a lot to me, Jackson, more than you know." "Good," he smiled, and it transformed his face, making him look younger and less guarded. "Now there is something else. There is a dance in town this Saturday, some kind of harvest celebration. I usually do not go to those things, but I thought maybe you would like to. Get away from the ranch for an evening, see some other faces. Are you asking me to go with you? I am asking if you want to go, and if you do, I would be happy to take you." Jackson shifted his weight, looking almost uncomfortable. "But if you would rather not, that is fine too." Cassandra thought about it. She had not been to a social event since before her father died, and part of her wanted nothing more than to stay on the ranch and avoid the gossip and stares that were sure to follow her. But another part of her, a part she had been trying to ignore, wanted very much to go to the dance with Jackson. "I would like to go," she said finally, "but I should warn you that people will talk." "They already are. Might as well give them something worth talking about." Saturday arrived with clear skies and a cool breeze that promised relief from the relentless summer heat. Cassandra had spent the previous evening washing and mending her best dress, a simple blue cotton that had seen better days but was still presentable. She braided her hair and pinned it up, wishing she had ribbons or flowers to make it more festive, but there was no help for it. Jackson appeared at her door just as the sun was setting, driving a wagon that had been cleaned and polished until it gleamed. He wore a clean shirt and vest, and his hair was combed back neatly. He looked so different from the dusty, work-worn rancher she saw every day that Cassandra felt her breath catch. "You look beautiful," Jackson said, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The ride to town took about an hour, and they talked easily, discussing the ranch and the upcoming winter preparations. But there was an undercurrent of something else, an awareness of each other that had not been there before, or perhaps had been there all along but was only now being acknowledged. The dance was being held in the town hall, and by the time they arrived, it was already crowded with people. Cassandra felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her as she stepped down from the wagon, and she heard the whispers start immediately. Jackson offered her his arm, and she took it, lifting her chin and meeting the stares with as much composure as she could muster. The music was lively, played by a small group of musicians who clearly loved what they were doing. Jackson led her to the edge of the dance floor, and they stood there for a moment, watching the other couples spin and sway. "I should probably tell you that I am not much of a dancer," Jackson said. "Then we will be evenly matched," he laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. "All right then, let us give it a try." He took her hand and placed his other hand on her waist, and they moved onto the floor. Jackson had not been lying about his dancing skills, but what he lacked in grace, he made up for in earnestness. Cassandra found herself laughing as they stumbled through the steps, and for the first time in months, she felt light and happy. They danced 3 dances in a row before Jackson led her outside to get some air. The night was cool and clear, and the stars overhead were so bright they looked like they might fall from the sky. "Thank you for bringing me tonight," Cassandra said. She leaned against the porch railing, looking up at the stars. "I did not realize how much I needed this until now. I am glad you came." Jackson stood beside her, close enough that their arms were almost touching. "Cassandra, I need to tell you something." She turned to look at him, her heart suddenly pounding. "What is it?" "When I first saw you out there practicing with those calves, I thought you were either the bravest or the most foolish person I had ever met. Maybe both." He smiled slightly. "But as I got to know you, I realized it was neither of those things. You are just someone who refuses to give up, no matter what the world throws at you, and I admire that more than I can say." "Jackson, let me finish." He took a deep breath. "I know you came to the ranch to learn and to save money for your own place, and I will honor that. I will teach you everything I know, and I will help you get your own land when you are ready. But I need you to know that somewhere along the way, this stopped being just about business for me." Cassandra's breath caught in her throat. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I have feelings for you, real feelings. And if there is even a chance that you might feel the same way, I would like to know." For a moment, Cassandra could not speak. She had been so focused on survival, on learning and working and saving, that she had not let herself think about her own feelings. But now that Jackson had spoken, she realized that she had been feeling it too, this pull toward him that had grown stronger with every passing day. "I do feel the same way," she said softly. "I have for a while now, but I did not think you saw me as anything more than a worker. I see you, Cassandra, I have from the start." Jackson reached out and took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "But I also do not want to rush you into anything. You have been through a lot and you have goals. I do not want to get in the way of those." "You are not in the way," Cassandra said. She squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses and the strength in his fingers. "You have given me a chance when no one else would. You have taught me and believed in me. That means everything. Then can I court you properly? Take you to more dances, maybe a picnic or two when we have the time? I would like that." Jackson smiled, and then, very slowly, he leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle and tentative, a question more than a demand, and Cassandra answered it by rising on her toes and kissing him back. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them and the stars overhead and the feeling of coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. Jackson rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Then why did you wait so long?" "Because I wanted to make sure you felt the same way. I did not want to be another man making assumptions about what you wanted. You are nothing like those other men, Jackson. You never have been." They stayed outside for a while longer, talking in low voices and stealing kisses when they were sure no one was watching. By the time they returned to the dance, Cassandra felt like she was floating. The whispers and stares no longer bothered her. Let people talk. She had found something real, something worth holding on to. The next few months passed in a blur of work and stolen moments. Jackson was true to his word and courted Cassandra properly, taking her on rides across the ranch when they had time and sitting with her on the porch in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. They kept their relationship quiet at first, not because they were ashamed, but because they wanted to protect it from the prying eyes and judgmental tongues of the townspeople. But as autumn arrived and the work began to slow down, it became harder to hide the way they felt about each other. Tom and Samuel figured it out first, though they were kind enough not to say anything directly. They simply started giving Jackson and Cassandra more opportunities to work together, finding excuses to send them off to check fences or move cattle in pairs. One evening in late October, as the first frost began to settle on the grass, Jackson asked Cassandra to take a ride with him. They rode out to the northern edge of the property, where the land rose up into a series of low hills. From the top of the highest hill, you could see for miles in every direction. The ranch spread out below like a patchwork quilt. "I come up here sometimes when I need to think," Jackson said as they dismounted. He spread a blanket on the ground and they sat side by side, watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and red. "It is beautiful up here," Cassandra said. She leaned against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of him through his jacket. "I have been thinking a lot lately," Jackson said. "About the ranch, about the future, about us." "What about us?" "I know we have not been courting for very long, but I feel like I have known you forever. And I cannot imagine my life without you in it anymore." Cassandra's heart began to pound. "Jackson," he shifted to face her, taking both of her hands in his. "I am not good at fancy speeches, and I do not have much to offer except hard work and a life that will never be easy. But I love you, Cassandra. I think I have loved you since the day I saw you out there with that rope, refusing to give up even when everything was against you. And if you will have me, I would like to spend the rest of my life with you." Tears pricked at Cassandra's eyes, but they were tears of joy, not sadness. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I am." Jackson reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold ring. "This was my mother's. She passed away when I was young, but my father gave it to me before he died and told me to give it to someone I loved, someone who was strong and brave and true. That is you, Cassandra." Cassandra looked at the ring, then at Jackson's face and saw nothing but love and honesty in his eyes. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, I will marry you." Jackson let out a breath he seemed to have been holding and slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and Cassandra felt like her heart might burst from happiness. They rode back to the ranch as the stars began to appear, their hands clasped together. Tom and Samuel were waiting on the porch, and when they saw the expressions on Jackson and Cassandra's faces, they let out whoops of congratulation. "About time," Tom said, clapping Jackson on the back. "We were starting to think you would never get around to asking her." "Congratulations," Samuel added, shaking Cassandra's hand with a grin. "You are getting a good man, though I suppose he is getting a pretty good woman too." "The best," Jackson agreed, pulling Cassandra close. They were married 6 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church in town. Cassandra wore a new dress that Jackson had insisted on buying for her, a cream-colored silk that made her feel like a princess. Jackson wore his best suit, and though he was clearly nervous, he spoke his vows in a strong, clear voice that left no doubt about his feelings. The townspeople who had gossiped about them for months showed up in force, some out of genuine goodwill and others out of curiosity. Cassandra did not care. She had eyes only for Jackson, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, she kissed him with all the love and hope she had in her heart. They had a small celebration at the ranch afterward, with food and music and dancing that lasted until well after dark. Tom and Samuel gave a toast that was equal parts heartfelt and teasing, and Cassandra laughed until her sides ached. That night, Jackson carried her over the threshold of the main house, which he had spent the past week preparing for her. He had moved his things into the larger bedroom and had added small touches that he thought she might like. New curtains, a rug for the floor, a mirror over the dresser. "Welcome home, Mrs. Rourke," he said, setting her down gently. "It feels like home," Cassandra replied. She looked around the room, then back at him. "It feels like where I am supposed to be." They spent their wedding night learning each other, taking their time and savoring every moment. Jackson was gentle and patient, making sure Cassandra felt safe and loved, and when they finally came together, it was with a sense of completeness that took her breath away. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, Jackson's arm around her shoulders and Cassandra's head on his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, and she felt a peace that she had not known since before her father died. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Jackson replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Always." The first year of their marriage was not easy, but it was good. Cassandra continued to work on the ranch, and Jackson never once suggested that she should give it up now that she was his wife. They worked side by side, building something together, and every evening they returned to the house, they now shared and talked about their days over supper. Cassandra discovered that she loved being married to Jackson. He was kind and considerate, always thinking of small ways to make her life easier. He brought her coffee in the morning before she was fully awake, and he insisted on teaching her to read the ranch's account books so that she could understand the business side of things. In turn, Cassandra made the house a home, adding small touches like wildflowers in vases and curtains that she sewed herself from fabric bought in town. In the spring, they expanded the herd and hired 2 more ranch hands to help with the work. Tom and Samuel had both gotten married over the winter, and their wives became friends with Cassandra, visiting the ranch regularly and bringing news from town. By summer, Cassandra realized that she had not thought about her original plan of buying her own ranch in months. She had everything she wanted right here: a home, meaningful work, and a husband who loved her. But one evening, as she and Jackson sat on the porch watching the sunset, she brought it up. "Do you ever think about what I said when we first met, about wanting my own ranch?" Jackson glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "I do. Do you still want that?" "I thought I did. But now I realize that what I really wanted was not to be dependent on anyone else. I wanted to prove that I could make my own way in the world. And have you proven that?" "I think so." "But this ranch is yours, Jackson. I do not want you to think that I am trying to take it from you or change things." Jackson reached over and took her hand. "Cassandra, this ranch stopped being just mine the day I married you. Everything I have is ours. If you want to make changes, if you have ideas about how to improve things, I want to hear them. You are my partner in every sense of the word." "You really mean that?" "I do. In fact, I have been thinking about something myself. The ranch is doing well, and we have the resources to expand even more. What if we bought the land to the east? It is good grazing land, and it would nearly double our acreage. We could build it into something even bigger, something to pass down to our children someday." "Our children," Cassandra repeated, and her heart swelled at the thought. "If you want them." "I know we have not talked about it much, but I would love to have a family with you." "I would love that too." They bought the land to the east that fall, and the ranch grew into one of the most successful operations in the territory. Jackson and Cassandra worked together to make it happen, and their reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle spread far and wide. In the winter of 1880, Cassandra discovered that she was pregnant. She told Jackson on a snowy evening in December as they sat by the fire in the main house. He had been reading the newspaper, and she had been knitting a blanket, though her hands were shaking so much that she kept dropping stitches. "Jackson, I need to tell you something." He set down the paper immediately, hearing the seriousness in her voice. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine. Better than fine, actually." She took a deep breath. "I am going to have a baby." For a moment, Jackson just stared at her. Then a smile spread across his face, so wide and joyful that it made Cassandra laugh. "A baby," he repeated, as if testing the words. "We are going to have a baby." "We are." He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her gently as if she might break. "This is the best news I have ever gotten." "The absolute best. You are happy." Happy does not even begin to cover it. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining. Are you happy? Terrified and happy in equal measure, Cassandra admitted. But yes, I am happy. The pregnancy was not easy. Cassandra suffered from terrible morning sickness in the first few months, and as her belly grew, she found it harder and harder to do the physical work she was used to. Jackson insisted that she take it easy, and though Cassandra chafed at the restrictions, she knew he was right. She took over more of the bookkeeping and planning, working from the house while Jackson and the ranch hands handled the physical labor. In early July of 1881, Cassandra went into labor. It was a long and difficult birth, lasting nearly 20 hours, and there were moments when Jackson feared he might lose her. But Cassandra was strong, stronger than anyone he had ever known, and when the midwife finally placed a squalling, red-faced baby boy in her arms, Jackson wept with relief and joy. "He is perfect," Cassandra whispered, stroking the baby's soft head. "He looks like you." "He has your nose," Jackson argued, though his voice was thick with emotion. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but had never settled on one. Now, looking at their son, Cassandra knew exactly what felt right. "James," she said, "after my father." "James Rourke," Jackson said, trying it out. "I like it. James it is." The first few months with a newborn were exhausting, but Jackson proved to be a devoted father. He got up with Cassandra for the midnight feedings, and he spent hours walking the floor with James when the baby was fussy. Cassandra fell in love with him all over again, watching him with their son. As James grew, the ranch continued to thrive. They hired more hands, built new barns and outbuildings, and became one of the most respected ranches in Wyoming. Cassandra still worked, though her role had shifted more toward management and planning. She had a natural head for business, and under her guidance, the ranch diversified, adding sheep and horses to their cattle operation. In 1883, Cassandra gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah. She had her mother's dark blonde hair and her father's blue-gray eyes, and she was as fierce and determined as both of them. 2 years later, another son arrived, this one named Thomas after Tom, who had become like family to them over the years. The children grew up on the ranch, learning to ride and rope and work the land just as their parents had. James was serious and thoughtful, with a natural way with animals. Sarah was bold and adventurous, always getting into trouble and talking her way back out of it. Thomas was the peacemaker, the one who could get his siblings to work together when they were fighting. As the years passed, Jackson and Cassandra watched their children grow and their ranch flourish, and they knew they had built something that would last. On warm summer evenings, they would sit on the porch together, watching the sun set over the land they had worked so hard to build, and Jackson would take Cassandra's hand. "Do you ever regret it?" He asked one evening when the children were all in bed and the ranch was quiet. "Giving up your plan to have your own place?" Cassandra looked at him in surprise. "This is my own place, Jackson." "It always has been. From the moment you told me I did not need saving, I needed a ranch, you understood me in a way no one else did. You gave me a chance to prove myself, and then you gave me a partnership, and then you gave me love. I have everything I ever wanted." "So do I," Jackson said, pulling her close. "So do I." In 1890, when James was 9 years old, he asked his parents to tell him the story of how they met. They were all sitting around the dinner table, and Sarah and Thomas immediately chimed in, wanting to hear it too. Cassandra and Jackson exchanged glances, and then Cassandra began the tale. "It was a hot day in August, and I was out in a field teaching myself to rope cattle," she said. "I had lost everything, and I was trying to figure out how to survive on my own. I was not very good at it yet, but I was determined." "And then Papa found you?" Sarah asked, leaning forward eagerly. "Then your father found me," Cassandra agreed. "He watched me for a bit, and then he rode over and gave me some advice, but more importantly, he gave me hope. What did he say? James asked. Jackson smiled at the memory. I told your mother that she did not need saving, she needed a ranch. And he was right, Cassandra said. She reached over and took Jackson's hand. I did not need someone to rescue me. I needed someone who believed in me and gave me a chance to build something of my own. Your father gave me that and so much more. Did you fall in love right away? Sarah asked, her eyes wide and romantic. Not right away, Cassandra said honestly. Love takes time, but I think I knew from the very beginning that your father was special. He saw me as a person, not just a woman who needed help, and that made all the difference. And I knew your mother was the strongest, most determined person I had ever met, Jackson added. I wanted to know her better, and the more I got to know her, the more I loved her. That is so romantic, Sarah sighed. It is real, Cassandra corrected gently, and real is better than romantic. Real is what lasts. As the children grew older, they each found their own paths. James took over more and more of the ranch operations, showing a natural talent for management and a deep love for the land. Sarah, true to her adventurous nature, became fascinated with the idea of breeding horses and developed a program that became renowned throughout the territory. Thomas discovered a love for working with the sheep and eventually took over that entire operation. In 1895, Wyoming was moving toward statehood, and the world was changing rapidly. Railroads crisscrossed the territory, bringing new people and new ideas. Jackson and Cassandra watched the changes with a mixture of excitement and nostalgia, remembering the wilder, rougher days when they had first met. One evening in the spring of that year, as they celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary, Jackson gave Cassandra a gift. It was a small leather-bound journal, and when she opened it, she found that the first page had been inscribed with words in Jackson's careful handwriting. To Cassandra, who never needed saving. You built this ranch with your own 2 hands and your unbreakable will. This is your story. Write it down so our grandchildren will know what an extraordinary woman you are. Cassandra's eyes filled with tears. Jackson, I mean it. You changed everything for me, Cassandra. Before you, this was just a ranch, just land and cattle and work, but you made it a home. You made it a legacy, and I want you to know that I see that. I have always seen it. She set down the journal and wrapped her arms around him. I love you so much. I love you too. Always have, always will. They danced that night in the living room of their house, with no music except the sound of their own breathing and the creak of the floorboards. Their children watched from the doorway, smiling at the sight of their parents still so clearly in love after all these years. In 1898, James married a local girl named Elizabeth, and they built a house on the eastern section of the ranch. A year later, they welcomed Jackson and Cassandra's first grandchild, a boy they named Henry. Cassandra held her grandson for the first time and felt the circle of life completing itself in the most beautiful way possible. Sarah married in 1900 to a horse trainer from Montana, and though she moved away, she visited often and always brought new ideas for improving the ranch. Thomas married a year later, and he and his wife built their home near the sheep pastures, where Thomas could be close to the animals he loved. As the new century dawned, Jackson and Cassandra found themselves with more time to simply enjoy the life they had built. They still worked on the ranch, but they also took long rides together, exploring the land they loved. They spent evenings on the porch, watching their grandchildren play and talking about everything and nothing. In 1905, on a crisp autumn day, they rode out to the hill where Jackson had proposed to Cassandra all those years ago. The view was just as breathtaking as it had been then. The ranch spread out below them like a living testament to everything they had accomplished. Do you remember the first time I brought you here? Jackson asked, dismounting and helping Cassandra down from her horse. "I remember everything about that night," Cassandra said. She took his hand and they walked to the top of the hill together. "I was so nervous. I thought you were going to tell me that I needed to leave the ranch, that things were not working out. And instead, I asked you to marry me. Best surprise of my life." They stood there in silence for a while, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. Jackson put his arm around Cassandra's shoulders and she leaned into him, fitting against his side as perfectly as she had 27 years ago. "We did good, did we not?" Jackson said quietly. "We did better than good. We built something amazing. We built it together. Always together," Cassandra agreed. As they rode back to the ranch that evening, the lights from the main house and the various other buildings glowing warmly in the gathering dusk, Cassandra thought about the journey that had brought her here. She had started with nothing but determination and a rope she barely knew how to use. She had been lost and grieving and desperate for a way forward. And then Jackson had found her. He had not tried to save her or change her. He had simply seen her for who she was and offered her the tools to build the life she wanted. He had become her partner, her love, and her best friend. Together, they had created not just a successful ranch but a family, a legacy, and a love story that would be told for generations. The years continued to pass, marked by births and weddings and the steady rhythm of ranch life. Jackson and Cassandra grew older, their hair turning gray and their movements becoming slower, but their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger, deepened by shared experiences, and the knowledge that they had built something that would outlast them both. In 1910, they celebrated their 32nd wedding anniversary with all of their children and grandchildren gathered around them. There were 10 grandchildren by then, ranging in age from 12 to just a few months old. The house was full of noise and laughter, and Cassandra stood in the kitchen, looking out at her family, and felt a contentment so profound, it brought tears to her eyes. Jackson came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" "About how lucky I am. About how different my life could have been if you had not found me that day. I was the lucky one. You made me believe in partnership, in true partnership, not just in marriage but in everything. You made me a better man, Cassandra." "We made each other better," Cassandra corrected. She turned in his arms to face him. That is what love is supposed to do. They kissed, and their grandchildren giggled and made faces, but their children smiled, knowing that their parents' love was something rare and precious. As the evening wore on and the family gathered around the table for dinner, James stood up to make a toast. "To my parents," he said, raising his glass. "Who taught us that strength is not just about physical power, but about determination and heart. Who showed us that love is not just a feeling but a choice you make every day. Who built this ranch with their own hands and made it a home for all of us. We are all here because of you, and we are all better because of your example. To Mama and Papa." "To Mama and Papa," everyone echoed, and Cassandra and Jackson clasped hands under the table, their eyes meeting in a look of pure understanding and love. In 1915, Jackson fell ill with pneumonia. It was a brutal winter, and the sickness hit him hard. Cassandra barely left his side, nursing him through the worst of it with a fierce determination that reminded him of the young woman who had taught herself to rope cattle against all odds. "You are not allowed to leave me," she told him one night when his fever was at its highest and he was drifting in and out of consciousness. "We have too much left to do. Too many grandchildren to spoil, too many sunsets to watch. You do not get to give up now, Jackson Rourke." Whether it was her words or his own stubborn will, Jackson fought his way back from the brink. By spring, he was up and moving around again, though he was weaker than he had been before. The illness had taken something from him, and both he and Cassandra knew that he would never be quite the same. But he was alive, and that was what mattered. They adjusted their lives accordingly. Jackson did less physical work and focused more on advising James and the other ranch hands. Cassandra stayed close to him, unwilling to take any chances. They spent more time together than they had in years, and in a strange way, the illness brought them even closer. In 1918, the world was shaken by war and illness, but the ranch remained a haven of peace and stability. Their grandchildren were growing up, some of them already talking about taking over various aspects of the ranch operation. Jackson and Cassandra watched it all with pride, knowing that everything they had built would continue long after they were gone. On a warm evening in June of that year, they sat on the porch as they had done thousands of times before. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Jackson held Cassandra's hand, his thumb tracing lazy circles on her palm. "I have been thinking," he said. "About what?" "About that day I found you with the rope. Do you remember what you said when I offered to teach you?" "I said I could keep up." "You did more than keep up, Cassandra. You exceeded every expectation. You built a life that most people can only dream about." "We built it," Cassandra corrected, as she always did. "You and me together. You know what I realized? You never did buy your own ranch. You were supposed to save up and get your own place, remember?" Cassandra laughed. "I did get my own place. This is my ranch as much as it is yours. It always has been." "That is what I am saying. You do not need saving. You never did. What you needed was a ranch and a partner and a chance to show the world what you were capable of, and you have done that and so much more." "Are you getting sentimental on me, Jackson Rourke?" "Maybe a little. I am an old man now. I am allowed to be sentimental. You are not that old. Old enough to know how lucky I have been. Old enough to know that every good thing in my life started the day I met you." Cassandra leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat there in comfortable silence, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. Around them, the ranch settled down for the night, the sounds of cattle lowing and horses nickering creating a familiar symphony. The years continued to be kind to them. Jackson's health stabilized, and though he was never quite as strong as he had been before the pneumonia, he remained active and engaged in ranch life. Cassandra developed a passion for teaching their grandchildren, passing on not just practical skills, but the values that she and Jackson had built their lives around: hard work, integrity, partnership, and love. In 1920, their youngest grandson asked Cassandra to teach him to rope. She was 64 years old by then, and her hands were not as steady as they once had been, but she took him out to the same field where she had taught herself all those years ago and showed him everything she knew. Jackson watched from a distance, leaning against the fence with a smile on his face. When Cassandra finally came back to him, flushed and happy from the exertion, he pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "You are still the most remarkable person I have ever met," he said. "And you are still the best decision I ever made." In 1925, they celebrated their 47th wedding anniversary. It was a quieter celebration than some of the previous ones, just the two of them and their children. The grandchildren were scattered now, some of them running different parts of the ranch, others pursuing their own dreams in nearby towns and cities. But they all came home regularly, and they all carried with them the lessons their grandparents had taught them. As the evening wound down and their children said their goodbyes, Jackson and Cassandra found themselves alone on the porch once more. It was their favorite place, the spot where they had spent countless hours talking and dreaming and simply being together. 47 years, Cassandra said softly. "It does not feel like that long." "It feels like both a lifetime and the blink of an eye," Jackson agreed. "I would do it all again, you know, every moment of it. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts. They made the good parts even better." Cassandra smiled and took his hand. "I love you, Jackson. I have loved you for so long that I cannot remember what it was like not to love you." That is the best thing you have ever said to me." They sat there until the stars came out, two people who had built a life together from nothing but determination and love. The ranch stretched out around them, a testament to everything they had accomplished. Their children and grandchildren carried on their legacy, ensuring that the Rourke Ranch would continue for generations to come. But more than the land or the cattle or the buildings, Jackson and Cassandra's true legacy was the love they had shared. It was a love built on mutual respect and partnership, on seeing each other as equals and choosing each other every single day. It was the kind of love that stories were told about, that inspired others to believe in the possibility of true partnership. As they finally rose to go inside, Jackson paused and turned to look back at the land one more time. "You know what the best part of all this is?" he asked. "What?" "I get to wake up next to you tomorrow and do it all over again." Cassandra laughed, the sound warm and full of joy. "Then let us go to bed, old man. Tomorrow is waiting." They walked inside hand in hand, closing the door on another perfect day. Behind them, the ranch settled into the quiet rhythms of night, secure in the knowledge that it was loved and tended by people who understood what it meant to build something that would last. The years that followed were gentle ones. Jackson and Cassandra spent their days in peaceful routine, still active but at a slower pace. They took long walks around the property, visiting with their children and grandchildren, and spending quiet evenings by the fire. In 1928, on a beautiful spring morning, Jackson passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was 73 years old, and he had lived a full and happy life. Cassandra was holding his hand when he took his last breath, and though her heart broke, she also felt grateful for every single year they had shared. The funeral was attended by what seemed like half the territory. People came from miles around to pay their respects to a man who had been known for his fairness, his integrity, and his devotion to his family. But it was Cassandra's eulogy that brought tears to everyone's eyes. "My husband taught me many things," she said, standing before the gathered crowd with a strength that belied her 72 years. "He taught me how to rope cattle and manage a ranch. He taught me how to be a good businesswoman and a good partner. But most importantly, he taught me that love is not about grand gestures or perfect moments. Love is about showing up every day and choosing each other, even when things are hard. Jackson showed up for me every single day for 49 years. And even though he is gone, I know that love continues. It lives on in our children and grandchildren. It lives on in this ranch that we built together, and it lives on in my heart where he will always be." Cassandra lived for another 12 years after Jackson's death. She remained active in ranch management, though James had long since taken over the day-to-day operations. She spent her time with her family, teaching her great-grandchildren the same skills she had learned so many years ago, and writing in the journal Jackson had given her, recording the story of their life together so that future generations would know what they had built. On a warm evening in July of 1940, Cassandra sat on the porch of the house she had shared with Jackson for so many years. She was 84 years old, and she was tired in a way that went bone deep. But she was not sad. She had lived a full and remarkable life, and she had loved and been loved in return. As the sun set over the ranch, painting the sky in the colors she had loved all her life, Cassandra felt a sense of peace settle over her. She closed her eyes and thought about Jackson, about the day he had found her teaching herself to rope cattle, about the words he had spoken that changed everything. "You do not need saving." You need a ranch. He had been right. She had not needed saving. She had needed opportunity, partnership, and love, and she had found all three with him. Cassandra took one last look at the land she had helped build into something extraordinary, smiled, and let herself rest. Her children found her there the next morning, peaceful and still, with a smile on her face. And though they grieved, They also celebrated a life well lived and a love story that would be told for generations to come. The Rourke Ranch continued to thrive long after Cassandra's death, passed down through the family just as she and Jackson had planned. Their grandchildren and great-grandchildren worked the land with the same dedication and love that their grandparents had shown, and the values of hard work, integrity, and partnership remained the foundation of everything they did. And on warm summer evenings, when the sun set over the Wyoming grasslands in shades of gold and pink, the family would gather on the porch and tell the story of how it all began. They would talk about Cassandra, the young woman who refused to give up even when the world was against her, and Jackson, the cowboy who saw her potential and gave her a chance. They would talk about how those two people built something extraordinary together, not because either of them was perfect, but because they were perfect for each other. It was a love story that had shaped a family and built a legacy. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple choice: to see someone not as they are, but as they could be, to offer not salvation, but opportunity, to build not a rescue, but a partnership. And in the end, it was proof that the best love stories are not about being saved. They are about finding someone who believes in you, who stands beside you, and who helps you build the life you were always meant to have. The Rourke Ranch stood as a testament to that truth for more than a century, a living monument to two people who understood that love was not about grand gestures or fairy tale endings. It was about showing up, working hard, and choosing each other every single day. That was the legacy of Cassandra and Jackson Rourke. That was the story that would never be forgotten.